It has to be noted that I'm not good at Undertale fan games, especially those that include genocide battles. Since I never did the genocide run in the normal Undertale, I have no chance against Sans-like battles. So I was skeptical upon seeing the Dustbelief Papyrus Rebirth game, a game where you play a genocide run as Papyrus. You see, the game was inspired by the comic Dustbelief, written and created by Aude Javel, which comic was so notorious and famous that their creation of Dustbelief created a whole trend of comic dubs, animations, versus edits, and, most notable, fan games and different takes of this notorious Dustbelief AU that they created. One of the most notorious Dustbelief takes was the fan game Dustbelief Papyrus Rebirth, which you can find on GameJolt. It has currently 2 chapters out and is quite notorious for its immense storytelling and staying true to the comics while also adding their own spin to the story. But what exactly is the story of Dustbelief Papyrus Rebirth, and is it even worth playing? Well, this is the question I want to answer right now, because today I will cover the first chapter of this notorious fan game, while in the next video I will cover the second chapter, and when the third chapter comes out I will cover the third chapter, and so on and so on. So grab some snacks, because now I am telling you a rather long tale of the Dustbelief Papyrus Rebirth game. The game opens with a rather impressive animation of the creator Cap Salad. After that we get presented by a rather enraged Papyrus, who apparently found out what the word drips mean, because he got the drip on. When we start the game we get immediately greeted to the story of Undertale. And I don't mean the musical, I mean the real story of Undertale, until Papyrus interrupts the story to tell his take on the story, where he informs the player that one day Sans just lost it all and tried to attack him. To protect himself, Papyrus uses his bone magic to stop Sans' attack barrage, but accidentally killed Sans. Sans was proud of Papyrus' action and Papyrus was completely devastated. But thanks to the newly found LV, Papyrus gained a new insight. He learned, thanks to his newly found madness and thanks to Sans' LV influence, that the human was at fault. The human was guilty. They forced him that Sans would go against Papyrus, that Sans would go mad and would kill everyone in his way, even his own brother. The human must pay, thought Papyrus to himself, and he is determined to stop the human once and for all, since now he doesn't believe in the human, but he believes in himself. After killing the human for the first time, for the manyest first time in a row, Papyrus finally noticed that he already had killed the human. With this realization, a new being is formed around him, the ghost of Sans. Now, I'm unsure if this ghost is a real ghost or just a fragment of Papyrus' own psyche, but either way, the ghost is rather helpful, since the ghost not only makes Papyrus feel like he is madder and madder and has almost a mental breakdown after seeing his dead brother as a ghost, but the ghost also informs Papyrus that he wants to kill the human, and to kill the human he must become more determined, he must become more stronger, and the only way to become more stronger and become more determined is to kill other monsters, so that he can stop the human and can stop the reset. Papyrus knows that he must do exactly that what his brother asked him to do, but is quite unsure if he is able to do so, since he knows every single person in Snowdin and has a personal connection between them, but more on that later. So, to keep himself occupied and grounded, he walks around Snowdin and around the forest and interacts with different objects at different landmarks. One for example of that would be right around the corner, where he interacts with the broken gate, which he built himself, where he noted that he especially constructed this gate for humans to stop them from advancing to Snowdin, but it didn't quite work as intended. Funnily enough, when Papyrus continues his walk throughout the forest, he encounters the lamp, and in typical Papyrus fashion, he believes that the lamp is the human. And we are first introduced to the battle system. We learn that the battle system is not a typical bullet hell battle system we know in Undertale, Undertale, but is rather a line-to-line battle system, where you, the player, control Papyrus to balance across different lines. Best example I could make is like the battle with Muffin and the Purple Soul, where you can only move across with your soul on these different lines that Muffin is presenting. In this game, Dustbelief Papyrus Rebirth, you control Papyrus on these lines. You can either decide for him to stay in the middle, go up, go down, attack or defend. By attacking, you must press the right key and you would attack, but be careful. Different monster will also try to attack you, and different monster would also be able to defend. So you must dodge all their attacks and must know when they defend and when they are wide open for an attack to deal the most amount of damage to them. This is quite important to master at the end of chapter 2, since in chapter 2 you face against Undyne, who is quite the content blocker if you're not well versed in this battle system, but more on that later. Sans makes a joke on how paranoid Papyrus is. Well, Papyrus counters with the fact that the human could be anywhere and he has to be on guard every time, since a human could have been behind that lamp. Well, Sans makes a joke, yeah, a lamp and a human are so alike. Quite funny in hindsight when you remember that Sans literally tricked Papyrus in the original Undertale with the fact that Chris was hiding behind a lamp and wasn't detected by Papyrus, since a lamp and a human are in the Undertale universe pretty much alike. Because Papyrus took some damage against the fight against the lamp, since the lamp was electronically charged, Papyrus inspects Sans' hangout post and notes that according to Royal Guard's duty code, that every Royal Guardman should have the necessary nutrient and items to heal themselves if a human should attack. Sans notes that he of course follows the codes of the Royal Guardsmen, but when Papyrus searches and searches for the right items, nutrients to heal himself from the electric wounds, he just finds ketchup. When asked, Sans answers that this was his special ketchup. When asked if this was just a normal ketchup from Grillby's, he doesn't deny it, but says, yeah, quite right, but it still heals Papyrus a little bit, which he finds rather confusing. By the way, these interactions between these two brothers about Royal Guardsman codes are quite interesting, and quite interesting characterization for Papyrus' character, since he truly wanted to be a Royal Guardsman, both in the Dustbelief universe and in the normal Undertale universe, so he of course knows every single code and rule of the Royal Guardsman book, and he will make a lot of comments about that. This is a pretty nice characterization, I must say, and that gets a nice plus point, if I may say so. They continue their journey throughout the forest, where they finally see the chest, and Papyrus learns from his brother that the chest is an important tool for the human to storage all their items, by telling a grim legend, which is of course false and mainly played for humors, that this box would steal monsters and kidnap monsters when the monster comes too close to the box. So Papyrus, of course, as the good boy he is, destroys the box, not only for the safety of the monster, not only for him to ensure that he gathers enough EXP to kill all the monsters, and to ensure that the human wouldn't store his items in the box. But let's for now continue the journey. Papyrus goes up and sees the fishing rod, where the normal Undertale universe, the fishing rod holds a note that got a phone number. Papyrus is rather enraged by this, since according to Royal Guardsman Road, you can fish here, this specific point. When he gets the note with the phone number, he makes this clear, and for all of her surprises, it turns out that the fishing rod is in fact a monster, and claims, I was framed, I didn't do anything with that, and jumps into the water willingly to escape Papyrus by the book approach of taking in criminals. Papyrus is quite curious of what exactly this mysterious phone number is, and calls with his phone this number. It has to be noted that in the normal Undertale universe, we get quite a distorted message when we call this number. Many believe that this was a phone call to Gaster, the mysterious mystery man, but Dustbelief Papyrus Rebirth makes a funny joke and explains that it was just a fish with a funny fish dialect, which Papyrus can perfectly understand. Sans is quite impressed by this and asks Papyrus how he can understand this gibberish fish language, while Papyrus answers that as a Royal Guardsman, he learned all the different dialects of different monsters in the underground to understand each and every monster. Once again proving that Papyrus is not the lovable idiot that he is most likely in every iteration of Undertale is depicted pə-PY-rəs. Papyrus continues his journey, where he finds a newspaper informing the resident of Snowdin that a murder has happened, this murder being the murder of Jerry. Sans informs Papyrus that he was the one who murdered Jerry because he wanted to gain EXP and thought to himself nobody would miss Jerry. Papyrus was rather enraged by this, that Sans spoke of murdering someone as simple as someone speaking about the weather, since this is bothering his soul. Killing monsters is not the same as fighting a human, Papyrus says to Sans. But Sans counters with the fact that they are already dead. The choice is by your hands or the hands of the human. But he understands that most of these monsters in Snowdin are Papyrus' close friends and work colleagues. This will be important later on because Papyrus is forced to kill every one of his work colleagues, speaking the royal guards. But with the help of Papyrus, they may even have a chance to stop this mindless, murderous rampage, since Papyrus is already able to see the human in the menu screen. They are right now the closest to their power. Sans never achieved this kind of power. He never was able to see the human's menu or even be able to be placed at the menu. Papyrus, ironically, has the best chance of stopping the human. With this newly found determination, Papyrus will try his best to make his brother proud, to make the human suffer, to stop the human once and for all. With this newfound determination, he continues his journey and finds his first victim. Even if it hurts, even if he doesn't feel like it's the right thing, he knows that his brother will be at his side. And so he confronts the first enemy, or in this case, his first Royal Guardsman member, this being Doggo. And Doggo drops some wire lines because he can't see shit because he is blind. He informs whoever is near him his action will tell if he is an enemy to monster kind or a friend to monster kind. Papyrus is rather hit by this declaration because he knows that his action will make him the enemy of all of monster kind and the enemy of the state. But he knows that it is the right thing to do. To stop all this mindless killing, he must kill the human. And so he confronts the dog and kills him. When he killed him, there was a short moment of euphoria, a feeling of accomplishment. We can see this perfectly with Papyrus smiling crazily. But at the moment, he quite realized as he stared at Doggo's dying eyes that he just killed one of his Royal Guardsman members, that he killed a friend, or at least a companion. And he once again starts to feel pressed. It's important to know that LV, aka the level of violence, is the level of how a monster or a human is willing to go to inflict pain to other people. The more level of violence one has gathered, the easier it is for this monster or human to hurt other people. And the stronger the will to hurt other people is, the more pain you inflict to other people. This is important to note because it will later on explains how Papyrus came madder and madder throughout the story and needs Sans' help stay grounded. But since all these enemies in Snowdin are people that Papyrus knows personally, he feels deeply guiltful and sad about these deaths. He always tells whenever he kills a well-known person about his personal experience with them, how Papyrus in this case secretly patted Doggo always on the head and how he was always loyal to the royal guards, and how he feels so bad knowing that Doggo will never know that it was Papyrus who killed him, that he fought against someone who he thought was an enemy to the throne and monster kind. But the only saving grace Papyrus thinks he has is that Sans is now a ghost, and Sans would most likely help Doggo find its eternal peace in heaven, or in this case monster heaven. But if that's the truth or just a lie Papyrus tells himself or Sans told him, it is currently unclear. But I personally believe that it is a coping mechanism Papyrus tells himself. But then again, Sans states that he will take care of Doggo. So once again, it's either Sans is a fragment of Papyrus' imagination, just like in an original Dusttale universe, or it is the truth and Sans really guides all the monster to underground heaven. But then again, it wouldn't perfectly fit the original Dustbelief comic, since Dustbelief Sans was rather annoyed of how Papyrus always would stop to gather the dust from different monsters and put them in a dust jar. But then again, this is a different take, the Dustbelief universe. So this version of Sans could be more empathetic towards Papyrus, which which we can see in a later chapter and in chapter 2. The journey continues and Papyrus is rather distraught and depressed after this dreadful deed, so he tries his best to at least do one good deed and visits the snowman. The snowman asks Papyrus to take a piece of him with him on his journey so that he can see the world. Papyrus, as thoughtful as he is, doesn't want to take one of his snowy piece because he knows that he needs to go to Hotland, and in Hotland it would most likely melt, not knowing that the snowman is made out of magic snow and apparently the snow doesn't melt in Hotland. So he takes the snowman's nose, which immensely disappoints and makes the snowman extremely depressed, since Papyrus took the only thing that made the snowman a snowman and rather special. But Papyrus does his best to make the best of the situation and promise the snowman that he will see the world thanks to the carrot he took. And so he continues his journey, knowing or hoping that he at least did one good deed this entire day. Papyrus continues with this journey and notices that his traps are inactive. So to stop the human once again, he makes the traps active and makes them even more deadlier. And the interaction between Sans and Papyrus are once again peak brotherly interaction, since Papyrus is like, you do know that the human would most likely know all these traps and puzzles, am I right? And Papyrus is like, well, at least that will buy us at least a bit of time, and when they can solve one single puzzle, maybe they'll stop this genocide all for good. If they do that, I will be completely fucked up in the head. We also learned that Papyrus is able to upgrade all of his traps and puzzles so that they become more deadlier. He saw it as his duty to give, at least in the normal Undertale universe, the human a chance to finish all these puzzles. But now that they know of the crimes the humans have committed, they know they are beyond saving, and all the traps that he has now created are now deadly as hell. Papyrus continues his journey and is now in a residence where a lot of normal NPC monsters are still stated in, who didn't evacuate right away. So Papyrus has the chance of gathering new EXP and LV. Sans stops him from leaving this area and confronts him and states that he needs to kill all of these monsters to gain enough LV to, at the end, stop the human. Papyrus agrees and kills every single one of them. And once again, we see whenever he kills a monster, the short moment of euphoria before feeling completely depressed. Sans congratulates Papyrus on this victory, but Papyrus states that he doesn't feel as great anymore, that monsters are so scared of me, and that is something unusual for him. But Sans confronts Papyrus by stating that if the human would have found them, they would be even more scared, and the human would have been stronger than Papyrus is currently right now. And to stop that, Papyrus must see monsters not as living beings, but just simply vessels for EXP points that gives him the opportunity to level up. Or, in short, a source of power. Papyrus continues his journey and once considered to set up another puzzles. You know, the moment where in normal Undertale universe he would set up the Junior Jumble puzzle, but he gets stopped by Sans. Even though Papyrus argues that puzzles would exhaust the human mentally, Sans notes that the human is too determined to be stopped by puzzles, even when these puzzles are too hard. The human would just continue and continue going forward. Papyrus agrees and stops putting up puzzles and just stays with traps, since he sees traps as puzzles without a right answer, which Sans agrees to, and even encourage Papyrus to build more traps for the human. We can see slowly and slowly Papyrus loses and loses more of his humanity and innocence, and becomes more and more the calculating monster he will become at the end of Dustbelief. This of course continues in the next room, where he ignores the microwave puzzle with the spaghetti, since his determined declaration of ignoring puzzles stays strong. He ignores even his spaghetti, which he made not for himself but for the people around around him. This is behind him now, mentally. This is behind him now, and a part of the old papyrus. The new papyrus is set on one mission to stop the human, and to do that he needs to gather more vessels of power, more EXP to gather more LV. And so he continues his killing spree and continues to detect 10 next monster in a new area. They couldn't escape Papyrus Rap because Papyrus puzzles stops them from fleeing, and since most of their bodies didn't have thumbs or comfortable hands, they weren't able to pull the lever, which is quite a brutal fate considering that many monster fractedly tried to solve the puzzle to flee from Papyrus, but they couldn't, not because it was too hard or that they couldn't find the solution of this puzzle, but because of their autonomy. Speaking of puzzles, Papyrus continues making the puzzles more and more diabolical and unable to be solved without taking damage or being pierced down by a bear trap, which would result into the death of the human. Sans is still kind of skeptic, knowing fully well that the human will most likely ignore these puzzles, and if they don't and would actually reset, as Papyrus puts it this way, he would most likely have a mental breakdown, which are a funny interaction, I must say. Papyrus then forward continues his murder spree by facing against Lesser Dog, and Papyrus knows him personally, so he is unsure if he wants to do this. But Sans helps Papyrus by stating that the human was able to one-shot Lesser Dog while still being at a lower LV. Lesser Dog would be dead either way, so Papyrus should take his power. But before he could strike Lesser Dog down, Lesser Dog confronts Papyrus and informs them about Undyne, who started the evacuation and made, because of this extreme case of a murderous human who not only dusted the ruins but also started dusting people in Snowdin. It has to be noted that people think that the human dusted the people in Snowdin, not Papyrus, that every single royal guardsman should help with the evacuation, and even made Papyrus now an official royal guardsman so that Papyrus would be able to help evacuate more people and would face against the human if necessary. Because Lesser Dog was so near on Papyrus, Papyrus uses opportunity to kill Lesser Dog with one hit, this being a betrayal kill, but he feels completely ashamed of himself and completely disgusted, since finally his dream has come true. He's finally a royal guardsman, the protector of the underground, the protector of the kingdom. And what does he do as a newly recruited royal guardsman? Killing his own kind, betraying the kingdom he tried to protect for so long. But once again, Sans confronts Papyrus and states all of them were once dead and will be dead, you giving them the mercy kill, since the only way they can find peace is when Sans guides them to the afterlife. Papyrus continues his journey and suddenly gets a flashback, not a flashback to his own life, but a flashback from a different timeline from Sans, who faces the human in a genocide road in the Judgment Hall, where he spits his usual monologue that kids like them should be burning in hell. Papyrus, who gets bombarded from this memory, takes damage, both physically and mentally. Sans Ghost then appears and asks what has happened, and Papyrus informs them that they saw Sans memories. I assume that this is because of the high amount of LV and now better understanding of what has actually happened in both Sans and Papyrus lives in different timelines, because thanks to the increased LV, Papyrus was also able to remember when he was able to kill the human and was later on able to interact with the menu of the human, and is also able to see the determination stars. Anyways, let's return to Sans and Papyrus interaction. Sans informs Papyrus that he lost this interaction between the human and himself in the Judgment Hall. The human always won. He had never a chance to beating the human, and the only way Sans saw to defeating this human was to become stronger. He tried to explain this to Papyrus, but Papyrus comforts Sans by stating that he promised himself and Sans that he would stop the human, so he will take over Sans' place and continue this murderous rampage to ensure that Sans would keep his promise promise to himself of defeating the human once and for all, even if Papyrus dislikes this mindless killing. That is quite brotherly love if you ask me. The brotherly love continues with the two bickering about their two extremely exquisite and artistic art pieces of snow sculptures, where Papyrus can't see Sans' incredible artistic skill of his own ice figure, which is, in Papyrus' eyes, just a lump of ice. But realizing that he wouldn't be able to see Sans in the flesh anymore and only in the form of a ghost since, well, he killed him, Papyrus became sentimental and declared to Sans' ghost that he loves him. Not in a weird Sweet Home Alabama scene, but more of a brotherly love. Because, well, they're brothers. Anyways, they hug it out and it's quite an emotional scene, with Sans declaring that he won't leave Papyrus and stays by him and won't part from him even 1 meter away. Because Papyrus can't slide over the ice puzzles he made himself, because Papyrus forgot his ice skaters and jumping over it with the help of his magic wouldn't be efficient in finding more monsters. So Papyrus takes a shortcut, something Sans doesn't understand, since his form of shortcuts would be teleportation, but Papyrus forms of shortcut would be jumping down a bloody mountain and sliding down the hill with the help of his sharp blades while dodging monsters and trees, while also trying to kill the monsters that come in his way to gather more and more LV. You can already imagine how Sans reacted to Papyrus' shortcut. First, he found it extremely incredible and cool, but also hard to watch, since he didn't want Papyrus to die in such a radical but also pointless death. So he begs Papyrus to not try this again, because he cares for him. Papyrus takes this into consideration and thanks Sans for being so considerate and thoughtful. Anyways, they continue, and I'm going to be completely honest, this is most likely my favorite interaction between these two, where they face the edge of the mountain and see an old house in the distance. They know that there lives an old friend of them, but they won't be able to get there. But Papyrus is like, hold up, I got the math, I calculated all of it, and if we throw this bone right in front of this ankle, we should be able to hit him. And Papyrus, you kind of, made some miscalculation. No, Sans, I did not. I calculated everything concretely right. I calculated everything for a headshot. Oh, that is actually quite more effective than my calculation. How the heck are you so smart? I know I'm glazing Papyrus, but that's actually quite literally the conversation, and Papyrus is extremely smart in both the original Undertale and especially in the Dustbelief universe. Anyways, I will keep it short because now we enter the last 2 screams. Because in the next room they face the final boss of Snowdin, this being Greater Dog. And Greater Dog is no pushover, he can only be defeated by Papyrus' rage attack, since all his other attacks, this being his bone swords, are unaffecting Greater Dog's armor. So when he fills up his rage bar, he was able to rip out Greater Dog's arm right then and there and use it to literally beat Greater Dog off the mountain. Sans notes that even though Greater Dog came from an old time, which you can see thanks to his old armor, he is nothing against Papyrus, who is strong enough to beat such an old monster. Papyrus even notes that he is in fact pretty strong and much agile than Greater Dog, completely knowing that he just brutally killed a monster in such a brutal way. We can already see that his LV amount has increased and messes with his mind, since he's quite giddy about it. Oh boy, poor sweet Papyrus becomes madder and madder. Speaking of madness, Papyrus burns down the bridge. He burns all the bridges down to slow down the human. It is quite actually funny, the interaction between Sans and Papyrus, since Sans is confused, since Papyrus mentioned that the bridge that he built is nothing more than a rock formation. So how could it be that Papyrus is is able to burn down rocks. Papyrus just notes that because he painted the rocks with paints that are quite flammable, the rocks catches fire because of that. Sans doesn't understand the logic, but doesn't try to understand it either. So we continue forward and see another burned victim, this being in Snowdin, Sans and Papyrus' house. And Sans is completely devastated. What just happened to our house? Who did this to our house?
Oh, it was me, brother. I was so devastated after killing you that I just had a mental breakdown and burned all the bridges down. After, of course, taking out my drip clothes.
And the seemingly only thing that survived the fire was a weird key. So now, this is actually pretty interesting, this interaction, because I already know what the key is for, since some of you probably know the secret lab behind Sans and Papyrus' house, which you can only get when you annoy Sans enough by loading over and over again the dialogue option in the judgment hole in the pacifist route, until Sans becomes so annoyed that you just load and load that he just gives you the key to his lab so he would be left alone by you. But apparently this Sans doesn't remember what the key is for. This could mean two things. Either he completely forgot what the key was for, or doesn't want Papyrus to know what the key is for, or this ghost version of Sans is really just a fragment of Papyrus' imagination, just like the phantom Papyrus in Dusttale, which would be fitting since Papyrus does have all the memories of Sans after defeating Sans in self-defense, but would also be an awesome plot twist, if I may say so. But then again, I really love these interactions and really enjoy the thought of Sans not leaving his brother even after death, and takes the form of his ghost to accompany his brother through this hard but necessary journey to ensure that Papyrus not only stays sane but also keeps his conscience and goes through with his plan. But then again, this could be once again an imagination of Papyrus. And so ends the first chapter of Dustbelief, the fan game. I will of course cover in the next video the second part, but for now I covered the first part. So if you're interested in more Dustbelief contests, please watch my Dust Swap, the butterfly effect video for more content. But for now I wish you all a bloody good day, and please check out my other videos. But for now, goodbye.